Uh-oh. Oh, doggone it. It seems like every time I've got something figured out about the beehives, the bees teach me a new lesson and humble me. Maybe I have a colony that I say is absolutely not going to survive through winter, and then they do. Maybe I have a colony that I say is way too strong for hive beetles to overtake them, but then they do. I have this colony in this green hive that the hive was under assault by robbers, but I said this colony is strong enough that they can stand up to the robbing. The other day I realized that the traffic at the entrance of this hive has been going down, so I thought I should open it up and see what's going on. And I found out that the population in the hive is much lower than I expected. They're still managing the hive okay. There's a few small hive beetles, but not too much of a problem. But I found absolutely no brood or sign of a queen whatsoever. Now, this time of the year, we're in a nectar dearth, and it's not uncommon for a colony to draw back their brood production or maybe even stop. But in this case, I think it's pretty clear that they are queenless. I had noticed a swarm here in the backyard around this hive, but I couldn't quite tell that they were coming from this hive, which is unusual for a swarm. It's usually a pretty obvious flow. Now, in retrospect, I'm thinking that maybe it was a swarm from this hive, and in fact, when I checked in here, I found a queen cell, and this time of year, they are not going to have a queen that gets well mated. I have the situation of a hive that was once strong but is now queenless and declining, and I also have a new colony that's a fairly strong colony but is from a recent cutout, and because of that, that colony needs some help. That gives me an opportunity to use the resources from what was once a strong colony to help the other colony get ready for winter. When I last opened this hive and realized that they were in trouble, I made a prediction at that point that I needed to do something about this hive or they were going to be subject to robbing. They have a lot of nectar stored up in here, but their population is dwindling, so they are becoming less able to protect their resources. That prediction that they could be subject to robbing turned out to be true. I was working in my garage just yesterday and looked out here and saw a frenzy of activity all around this hive. And I came out and checked, and I saw bees trying to get in any way they can, checking out, the closed entrances, checking out the vent holes on the edge of the box, everything that they could find, and assaulting the entrance as well. So I closed the entrance down to just a narrow gap. Actually, I closed the entrance down completely to the vent setting for a period of time to kind of stop the flow of robbers. But then I came back in the evening and I set the opening to just a small entrance so the bees that are in here would be better able to protect that small entrance. Well, at the same time that I saw all of that going on, I looked across the yard and I saw in the small hive where I put that new colony from the cutout, a whole lot of activity there. And so I went over to check that out, and it was different activity. It wasn't robbing, there weren't bees trying to get in every way they can, there wasn't this assault on the entrance. It was just very active, as if they had a strong nectar flow going on. So I firmly believe that that new colony, which is in need of resources to get ready for winter, were the ones that were guilty of robbing out this one, or at least attempting to. So what I'm going to do today is bring those factors together. They're trying to get to these resources. I'm going to give them these resources. This colony is doomed without a queen, so better that we take what we have here and use it for that colony. When I move this hive, this colony as it is going to lose its foragers. They're going to keep searching for a home over here. I'm okay with that for a couple reasons. Number one, this colony's doomed anyway, even if I salvage those foragers, and I might put a swarm trap box over here. Maybe they'll move in and I can take that over and let them move into that new hive. But regardless, even if I did nothing, eventually this colony's going to be dying out anyway. The second reason I'm okay with losing those foragers is that when I try to combine the bees from that new cutout colony with the bees that are in this box and on the frames, it's the foragers that are going to be most defensive and try to fight as I bring those colonies together. So if I bring this box over and lose some of those foragers, they're still over here wandering around while I'm moving the house bees and the comb and everything together with that other colony at the new location, I'll have less of a situation where the bees are going to be prone to fight. So let's get into this, get this box moved, and get that other colony inside. Frames are pretty much full of nectar here, not all capped. You can see as I put these in here how the bees aren't really covering these frames, and that's kind of typical of the population of bees throughout this hive. They're dwindled down pretty badly. Like I said, I do think that they cast a swarm. I'm just not quite sure why. They aren't out of room. They've got space to build, comb, and store up nectar. For some reason they took off, and like I said, I did find a queen cell in here. Now it could be an old one, or it could be that they actually tried to make a new queen and cast a swarm with the old one. But this time of year, that's not a very likely proposition to be able to raise a queen and get her mated. Oh, sorry, bee. Okay, that's one. Don't have too many bees milling about here yet, so I'm gonna take a second and run this box over. These next three frames are a little wonky. It's got some bumped out comb there. Don't know if you can tell very well on there, but these three frames kind of come as a set, because I got that funny comb there. I got the comb to match that goes on the other side, and notice this gap right here, because that gap matches a bump on the comb right there. So it's like putting a puzzle together. I think I already passed the frame that had the queen cell on it. Now I'm close to the entrance. There's a few more bees here, but certainly no population that is beneficial, but they've got good resources. This frame, they've got quite a bit of pollen and nectar stored up. And now we're down to the last frame. And a few small hive beetles on here, but that's on the end. The bees kind of have them pushed out to the end there. So that clears the frames out of this hive, and so I'll put these over at the new location, and then we'll get that hive moved over. I just want to take a second to admire the propolis envelope that the bees have built inside of this hive. This hive is a few years old, and it's just beautiful. It's a nice reddish color in there, but they've got that entire interior coated with propolis, along with the extra they've added along the edges. That marks places where the divider board has been. And that propolis, as it builds up on the inside, kind of helps to waterproof the inside of the hive, fills up any gaps. It also provides an antimicrobial environment for the bees, so gives them a more healthy environment. Okay, so I'm going to do this in a fairly orderly fashion. I'm going to pull the frames from this small hive here in the order that they are in the hive and put them from this end over. And then I'll add the frames that were in the hive, and I'll just keep continuing on through. I've set these boxes here in the order that I removed the frames. So actually this was closest to the entrance, and then this was farthest from the entrance. So we'll have the frames from there, and then we'll work our way through these boxes. One thing I am going to do, I'm going to open up these and let those forager bees come out, because they're going to go wherever they go and then return back to the location over there. So that'll give us less foragers that will be trying to defend against the bees from that new colony. And I think I'll go ahead and close this entrance, so these bees will have to start finding a new hive, which is right here. You can tell these bees have a much more dense population. Now they're in a smaller hive, but they're still able to cover those frames pretty well. These first couple frames are actually from that small hive box that had a queen but a dwindling population, because when I did this cutout I did not get the queen. So I added the queen to this hive. I do see eggs in here, so I can see that that queen that I added here is laying. I don't see her moving around on this frame. Maybe she was on the other one. So this cutout colony has kind of been a catalyst for combinations here, combining them with that small weak hive, now combining them with this large hive with a declining population. Here we have a frame of comb from that cutout. Obviously no comb at the top there. I wish it did have some, but that's the way it goes. They've got pollen and nectar in there. Hopefully they'll start building down from that top bar. What they might be prone to do is actually build out that comb next to it to fill that gap. We'll see what happens. Here we got a good populous frame. Seeing a couple bumped out cells. I'm checking just to make sure they're not trying to build queen cells. And that may have been something they started building before I gave them that other queen. I do see a couple cells on here that look like they were queen cells, but they've chewed them open. So it's possible that maybe they had some eggs and they started trying to raise a queen before they were given a queen, and now they are abandoning that notion. I'm going to go ahead just to make sure. We know that queen is in there laying. I'm going to cut these cells open if they are queen cells. And yeah, there is a larvae inside of there. On this one they've got it attached well to the sides and they're kind of building up the side here, so maybe they'll put a little more height on that one. One thing I do like to see in here is that my comb that I mounted, it's kind of slipping out the side on the bottom here. I'm not going to be too concerned about that, but for the most part it stayed in the frames pretty well. It did slide down as the bees, I had rubber bands that I was using to hold those up, but when the bees removed the rubber bands, they removed that support. Now this, this piece of comb is not as well secured, and it's slipping off the bottom there. I may try to remount that. Oh, doggone it. A little late. Alright, well, we'll still work on that. Okay, which way is up here? If this were a comb with a lot of honey in it, I probably wouldn't worry too much about remounting it. There's a lot of capped brood in here, and hopefully a lot of that brood is still viable. So I'm going to try to keep it. These bees are pretty good about removing those rubber bands, so I want to make sure that we put on as many as I can. So hopefully they'll get that attached. Add some wax in there to attach that comb to the sides before they pull those rubber bands out. Kind of watching as I put these in here to see if I see any of the bees being defensive, basically any fighting going on. Didn't notice anything like that. I see a lot of bees at the front fanning, and a lot of them are carrying pollen. So that means we've got foragers coming back in and looking for home here, so that's good. next 3 frames are those three goofy frames. So I'm just going to set those aside for a second, kind of put them more towards the end of the hive, and then harvest those out later, hopefully. These frames are nice and heavy with nectar. Hopefully we'll be able to harvest that in a couple weeks here. Okay, this is probably a good place to put these 3. So because that original, well, this hive at its original location had been such a strong hive, they gave us a start with a lot of frames of good resources. And so put that together with that strong cutout colony and the queen from that small box, and I think we got a pretty good colony here to get ready for winter. Now, I'm not going to leave all these frames in here over winter. I'll be coming back in a few weeks to condense this colony and get them ready for winter, but this gives them lots of resources to work with for the time being. I'm hoping that they will fill in some of the tops of those frames with the gaps at the top, the frames that were from the cutout, but we'll just see how that goes. I'm happy to see the bees congregating and fanning at the entrance here. That should really help them transition over from the other location there. I will probably shake that box out and then just move it completely away so the bees aren't confused by that box still being there. But overall, I think this transition went pretty well. I started with 3 and went to 1. I guess you could call that a negative, but I think having this one strong colony getting ready for winter is a real positive. If you haven't seen the cutout video where I got that colony from, then you can check that out right here. Or if you want to see the video combining that cutout with that small colony where I got the queen, you can see that right here. Or if you've already seen those, you might enjoy this video that YouTube has selected especially for you. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you next time.